This is Robert with Pioneer Smokehouses, and today's video is part one in a three-part series for how to smoke pork ribs. This video is preparation and seasoning. So let's go ahead and start by taking a look at the ribs. Now today, I have four types of ribs to show you. This is a baby back pork loin. This is a full back. This is a St. Louis cut pork spare rib. And this is a full spare rib. Let's go ahead and talk about the backs first. These come from the back side of the pig, and if you see, they are notably smaller than the other ribs. This one here would be towards one side, and this would be towards the other side, which the babies are the smaller ones. Now, we're not going to deal with those today, but they are very good cut, and they're a little bit leaner than the spare rib. So I'm going to go ahead and put these back in the cooler bag. Traditionally, when you go to the store, this is what you're going to find. This is a full pork spare rib, and this will be what's most likely going to be the lowest price and on sale. Now, these here are a nice big piece of rib, and you can cook them just as is. But what I prefer to do is I prefer to cut them into a nice square little package. And when you cut them, you end up with the St. Louis style pork rib. Most of the time, I like to buy this pre-cut this way from the store. It just makes my life a lot easier because this is what I'm going for anyway, and this is what I recommend. St. Louis cut pork spare rib. So today, we're going to use these two in our demo. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to get our gloves on, and then we're going to open these things up. I'll be right back. So I laid these two racks of ribs out so that way you can see them and you can see the difference here. And basically, it's just a nice symmetrical trim. Now, I did make a special effort to pick a full spare rib rack that had a nice trim on it, so it wouldn't be quite as much work. But we'll go ahead and we'll start with the process here. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to remove the membrane from both racks of ribs. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to put my knife in right along next to one of the bones towards the middle of the membrane, and then I'm going to roll it upwards with the dull edge up. Don't want to roll the serrated edge up, otherwise it will cut the membrane and that will defeat the purpose. I want to be able to get in there and grab onto it just like this and pull off as much as possible in one go. Oh, and that wasn't too bad at all. Go ahead and throw this in the garbage. Repeat that again, about the same spot. Now, if the membrane breaks, just like happened there, what I'll do is get up so that way I have a nice piece to grab onto on both sides. And then I'll take a paper towel, put it in my hand and pinch tightly on the membrane, and then I can just pull it right on out of there and it just holds right in there. If you don't use a paper towel or something that will reduce the slipping, you'll never be able to get that out of there. I'll do this again on the other side. And sometimes it takes you a couple of tries to get all that membrane gone. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do the St. Louis cut, and I'll be right back. So here we are with them all removed, and I got to say that the St. Louis cut was a little easier. So two things to mention is that if your ribs are still frozen, which you can totally cook frozen ribs, rinse the back with a little bit of hot water real quick, just enough to get the fat to soften up, and you'll be able to remove that membrane. The other thing is, there's a lot of people who say you don't necessarily need to remove the membrane. I say try it both ways and tell me what you think. For me, it's hands down that membrane has to go. Your body can't really process the membrane, so you're just chewing something that you're not really going to eat. Also, it prevents you from getting good seasoning on there. Now, you do what you like to do, and if you are going to leave the membrane on, at least score it by running a crosshatch pattern like this, so that way it will release the fat from underneath. Now, you still won't be able to get any seasoning under it, but that's at least better than nothing. Now, typically, I leave the St. Louis ribs just like this, but sometimes what I'll do is I'll trim off the edge a little bit because I like to get rid of that last rib here. And today I'm going to go ahead and do that. That'll get us a totally square cut. I'm going to inspect it, make sure there's no extra fat that I'm concerned about. There's a little bit here, but really, that's probably going to mostly render off. So I'll just trim just a touch of that, just so you can see what I'm talking about. And for today's preparation, I'm using a Victorinox curved boning knife. I love my Victorinox knives. They're budget friendly and they work really well. I can run these through a standard sharpener, or I can send them out to have them sharpened and they just come right back. Now, the St. Louis one is done because the store did most of the work for us. Now let's look at the standard rib rack. Now, sometimes I like to take this little flap off first, but let's go ahead and work on these other pieces. So the first thing is that I want to try to get rid of this, but leave as much of the meat as possible. I'm just going to get right underneath that bone there. Cut that out like that. Okay, now our goal here is to square it up as much as we can. So I'm going to come right here and go straight across. What we're doing here is we're just cutting cartilage. This piece is also called a rib tip. These are really good to eat. I just don't like the rib tips with the bones at the same time. Now that I've got that, I'm going to take my knife and put it in that little flap there and just run it across. I'm trying not to cut into the ribs. I just want to get rid of that flap. And just like that, that flap is gone. And they're going to take a couple of these little pieces of fat out of here. Again, you don't have to do that. That will render down. If you do make sausage or any kind of ground pork, that'll work really well to go in with your cuttings, especially with something lean like a pork loin. We have the same thing with this one where we have a piece that does not have any bones in it, and there's a little short rib right there, which is the last one, and we want to get rid of that. So I'll go right in between that little short rib and that, and we got a nice big piece here. I'm going to go ahead and slice that in half. That way we can cook that too. So now I'm going to take the rib tips, cut those in half so we can throw them on there. I went ahead and moved all of the pieces that we cut off of the cutting board, and so now all we have is the two racks. Notice that my spare rib is a little bit smaller because when they do it, they select the largest ones to make the St. Louis out of. St. Louis's are also a little bit more expensive, so keep that in mind. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to season the ribs. This would also be a good point where you could marinate them. Let's talk about seasoning and get that done first. I have seasoning in here pre-mixed, and what we have here is some salt, some brown sugar, some pepper, and some garlic, and smoked paprika. Nothing is complete without smoked paprika, I'm just saying. Now, we want to go ahead and spread that on here and then pack it in a little bit. So I'm going to start by doing this edge right here. And I'm just going to come across. Trying to keep it mostly over the cutting board, but of course, these are kind of big for a cutting board, so it gets around a little bit. All right, now we've got that side done. We want to press it in. I'm going to flip it over. Then put that in there, just a little bit on the edges. Same thing here, a little bit on the edges. Let's do the back here. Now you're going to notice something here. I did not put anywhere near as much seasoning on the back as I did on the front. And that's because there's just a lot of spots where there's no meat. So you're really not eating much. So there's no reason to over season that back. Now we go ahead and press it in just like we did before. We're going to flip it back over. And we're going to sprinkle any of the spots where we might have knocked it off. And then we're going to let these rest for about 10 to 15 minutes. I say 15 minutes, and the reason is proteins will start coming to the surface and a little bit of the moisture because of the salt in the mix, and this will start to really get tacky. You can see that it's already turning moist looking, which really, that's what's happening, is the moisture is just going ahead and hydrating the seasoning mix. So press it down one more time. And then we'll let it rest while we talk about the marinade. A marinade is basically a seasoning liquid that has some sort of acid base in it. That could be lemon juice, lime juice, or apple cider vinegar in my case. I always use the apple cider vinegar. It gives it just a nice little tang to it, and I prefer that over lime juice or lemon juice. Now, you mix that up in a bag with your preferred spices, and I recommend not putting very much salt in that. And then you soak your meat in that for 2 or more hours. It's a really good idea to toss that in before you go to bed, and then the next morning you can go ahead and use that. If you don't put any salt in it, you can go straight from the bag straight to your smoker and just add a little bit of a dry rub with a little salt on it right before you go in, and it'll hydrate almost instantly because the ribs will have a nice coating on it. Also, something else that's really common in the marinade is oils. That helps bind everything together really well. I do have recipes for pork dry rubs and a marinade on a post on my website. You'll find that link directly below. Now these are almost ready. They just need a couple more minutes of rest time. While that rests, I'm going to go ahead and season up these pieces because they're going to go on the grill too. Now that we've got all these pieces of meat seasoned and we've rested these racks for 15 minutes, they're ready to go on the grill. Also consider using your marinade overnight and then wiping it down lightly and putting your dry rub on right before you go on to the smoker. This will give you a complex flavor with both marinade flavors and the dry rub flavors on your smoker, which can really elevate your game. One final note is always keep a written record of what you use for spices and your cook time and stuff like that. A barbecue journal can really improve your performance over a long time. This is the end of this section of the video, and you will find right here a link to the playlist for this, which will include the first 3 videos for the smoking pork ribs section, also a tip video, and then a bunch of other cooking videos. Over here, you're going to find the next video in the series. So thanks for watching. Have a great day.